All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Elections Weekly. I'm your host, Eric Cunningham. We were not able to do this yesterday because we had some scheduling conflicts, but we're doing it today. It's pretty close to our usual time, so we hope you'll be able to join us today for this. If not, you can always listen to it on our podcast platforms, which you're probably listening to it on right now. But yeah, with us as usual, we got Joe Szymanski and Dylan Brown. And we don't have Kraz this week, but we do have the two of them. We're going to be talking about some of the stuff that's gone on this week, because we have a pretty interesting week in terms of politics. We had some new ratings updates from Elections Daily. We had a big reconciliation bill drop out of seemingly nowhere, and then we had that's pretty much been the two big ones of the week. But I'm going to go ahead. Let's go into start off here with our election ratings updates. We have several major ratings that we updated on Monday. We'll talk about them more in depth with you, though, right now, because these are some pretty interesting and noteworthy shifts. The two big ones, or rather the biggest one, the biggest two, all of them are in gubernatorial races. We changed 3 gubernatorial race ratings, 2 of them favoring Republicans and 1 favoring Democrats, as about expected. We changed the biggest one. We changed Oregon governor from leans Democratic to toss-up. Then we shifted Maryland governor from likely Democratic to safe Democratic. That seat is entirely out of reach now for Republicans. That's not going to be a district, the state they're going to be able to hold on to. Guaranteed flip for Democrats at this point. And we switched Georgia's gubernatorial race from leans to likely Republican. So throw it to Joe to kind of explain a little bit of each, but we're going to go more in depth into the reasons why, I guess, here in a second.
Yeah, so I'll start with the easiest one. That would be, of course, the race in the gubernatorial race in Maryland. Of course, Larry Hogan is termed out as governor of Maryland. Very popular, moderate Republican. Obviously, with him retiring, it was going to be hard for him to hold this seat anyways. But in a key thing here, we did have it as likely because Republicans had a Hogan-esque candidate in Kelly Schultz running. However, she lost the primary to Dan Cox. I believe that lead that Cox had is, I'm going to check this, but I believe that lead is now down to single digits, I believe now.
It is.
After mail. I'm going to double check the exact number on that right here, but after mail-in ballots, we are seeing this down to, I believe, a single-digit result here. But Cox is the winner. It's problematic for Republicans because Cox is an election denier. He's a big believer in the idea that the 2020 election was stolen. Obviously, not something that is going to fly in the state of Maryland, where Joe Biden won by 30 points, and is not going to fly in just a lot of places in general outside of some very rural areas. So, obviously, Cox winning that means we shift that race to safe Democratic. And then we'll go to Oregon. Now, this is Oregon's is probably shaping up to be one of maybe the most interesting gubernatorial race in the country this year. And it's not because there are like significantly interesting Democratic or Republican candidates. Actually, it's because there seems to be a serious independent candidate in this race. And that candidate is now former state. She resigned to focus on her run for governor. So now former state senator Betsy Johnson. She used to be a Democrat. She switched to an independent after having a fallout with the Senate Democratic caucus. She represented a more rural area. She represented more along that coastline area of Oregon. That's become more in that northeastern part. That's become more purple in recent years because of the working class trends in that area. But it's been very interesting to see this year because they've all been internals, Republican or Johnson's own internals, mind you. However, even in the Republican internals, we're seeing Johnson routinely poll around 20 to 25% in these polls. And that's meaning she, as of right now, is taking in a good chunk of the electorate. That makes this a really wonky election now. And a state like Oregon, especially for Republicans, if you have an independent taking away 20% of the vote, that means a Republican could, in theory, win with the Republican base. I will say in Oregon is a very strong Republican base, I should say. Especially, I know Eric and Dylan both noticed. If you look at Eastern Oregon and even some parts of southeast of Southern Oregon, Southwest Oregon, I should say, most of those places are very, very, very deep red places. The stronghold Republican base, is a very, very strong. They don't move for a lot of people. So that would mean, theoretically, if Johnson ends up pulling around 20, 25%, that means Christine Drazan could, in theory, pull off with maybe 35 to 38% of the vote then come the general election day. So that's why we feel it's comfortable moving the toss-up. Johnson is very clearly a serious candidate in this race. She's gotten some endorsements from well-known moderates. 2018 GOP gubernatorial nominee, a well-known moderate, Newt Bueller, has endorsed Johnson, as well as now soon-to-be former 5th District Congressman Kurt Schrader in his FU tour to the Oregon Democrats, and on his way out has endorsed Johnson as well. So she does. So this is not just a flea campaign. She is someone who has legitimate endorsements, has legitimate money behind her, and is not someone who should just be kind of looked at as small-time independent. She has a lot of money behind her, and she has definitely some strong voices behind her in some key areas.
And this is one thing I do want to mention, just emphasize real quick as well. This is a race we could have considered moving down the line anyway, even if Johnson was not in the race. Oregon gubernatorial races are almost always competitive to a really solid degree. Democrats have not won more than 51% in a gubernatorial election in Oregon since 1998. And even before then, they've only won it the last time they'd done it before then was in the 1980s. Republicans typically have a base of around 43 to 40. The worst they've done is 43.5. They usually get 43.5 to 47.5% of the vote. In these gubernatorial races, they're usually very competitive. This presence of an independent candidate though just puts us on the board a lot earlier than we would have expected normally for Oregon. This applies to presidential years too. They've had gubernatorial races in, among other things, 2016, and the Republican far outpaced Donald Trump. This is a state where I've been pretty bullish on for a while. I think this is when we were always going to be considering moving, but Johnson is clearly running a very, very serious campaign. And every poll done so far in the race, granted they're all Republican or independent internals, have Johnson in the upper 10s to mid 20s. We don't have any Democratic polls out from Oregon yet, which is somewhat unusual. But every poll that has been done so far, and all of them are internals, have shown her pulling a substantial portion of the vote.
And I do want to add on another point to this. I think Dylan does want to say something, so I'll let him get his word in here. But I do want to add in another small thing here is that Kate Brown, the current governor of Oregon, a Democrat, is someone whose approval ratings is what you would call in the gutters. Morning Consult polling, if you don't know Morning Consult, they're a big pollster that usually polls the approval rating of every gubernatorial candidate in America. Their recent polling showed Kate Brown to actually be the only current governor in America to have an above 50% disapproval rating. She polled at 40% approval, 55% disapproval for performance. Brown, of course, is retiring. She's term limited out, actually, but of course, in this wave year, what we expect to be at least a solidly decent Republican year, along with the fact that, again, we have this kind of weird election-based structure out right now. And the fact is that Kate, there's a clearly significant amount of opportunity for those in Oregon who want to see a change from Kate Brown. And I think because the Democrats have nominated its current House Speaker, Tina Kotek, it might be a little bit hard for Kotek, being someone who has been up there with Brown for a lot of these policies of hers. It may end up being hard for Kotek to split herself from the incumbent governor, who is, again, right now, just in one of, if not the most unpopular governor in the nation.
Yeah, no, and I'm sorry, I actually wasn't trying to butt in. I didn't think you guys could hear me clearing my throat. I ate my dinner really quickly. Sorry, I will mute when I do that.
That's fine.
You can.
This is a good question here. I do want to bring the.
I have things to say about Georgia when we get to it.
Yeah, though. I do want to bring this up though. Has there been any outlook on the outlook of the Georgia Senate race? So basically, for those who are not familiar, Oregon had a weird compromise, basically in exchange for shoring up a bunch of legislative Republicans in the House and Senate. Basically in exchange for pretty fair maps in the legislature, Republicans basically let Democrats gerrymander the House of Representatives. They could have stopped.
They would not sue. Don't forget, they would not sue on the map either.
Yeah, they agreed not to sue. So basically, and keep on the congressional. There's 3 seats DDHQ thinks are competitive. We think there's 1 or 2. DDHQ has 3 that are very competitive right now. So even that's not necessarily going to work out perfectly for Democrats. They got all but 1 right now. Worst case, they could end up with a 3-3 delegation. Not what they would have wanted. 4-2 would have been far safer, or even a 4-1-1. We are not officially rating all the state senate races. We have people on our team that are rating them individually. But we don't keep track of them like Chaz Nuttycombe and CAnalysis do. What we can say though is that Republicans won the state senate in Oregon in 2010. It's something they've clearly been able to do in wave years. The question is how much they can run above the ballot, how much they can get back in suburban areas. It's not impossible they pull this thing to a dead even. I don't think I think it's, from what I remember from our article, it's pretty difficult for them to get to an actual majority, but a split Senate would not be impossible. And if you have a Republican governor, that means the lieutenant governor will be breaking any ties in that state Senate. So it's possible. I would not think it's as likely as Republicans winning the gubernatorial race, though. If the gubernatorial race is a toss-up, I would consider the legislature still to be leans Democratic. But that's just me speaking. I don't think we've done a whole lot of research specifically into the Oregon legislature. Probably C-Analysis would probably be a better go-to there for the district-by-district breakdowns, at least.
Yeah, that's for sure. But moving on, of course, the big one we had was Georgia. In what I think was surprisingly not seen as a controversial move. I thought we were going to get a lot more hate for that on the day than we did. For some reason, people focus on Oregon a lot. Again, even though, as Eric and myself mentioned, there's a lot of good reasons why Oregon is a toss-up right now.
Mm-hmm.
But Georgia, the reason we've changed Georgia to likely Democratic, this is not because of a marginal thing. When I'm doing these ratings and I'm going over them by myself and I say to the team, hey, I think these are the changes we should do, I am not necessarily looking at leans and likely and safe in terms of margin. That's not always the case. What I'm looking for is terms in successive victory. And I think when it comes to the Georgia gubernatorial race, I think it's relatively likely right now that Brian Kemp is going to be the victor over Stacey Abrams, even if Raphael Warnock retains that Senate seat. And that's because it is, even though we've seen very weird polling, it has continuously showed up in polling that Kemp is significantly outperforming Raphael Warnock. He's continuing beating Stacey Abrams by around 49 by 49, 44, 50, 44, 50, 45, 51, 46,
Yeah, there's been nearly 24 polls so far, and Kemp has led in all but one of them, and in that poll, he was tied. That poll was Quinnipiac, which is basically garbage at a statewide level. So, I mean, I'll let Joe continue here, but I do want to say, there's so much polling here, it's indisputable at this point that he has a very, very stable lead right now.
Yeah, Abrams would need to do a lot of heavy lifting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a very legitimately hard thing for Abrams to do right now. I think the other issue is that both candidates are so well known. It's not like Abrams can become better known to these people and thus gain in that way.
Mm-hmm.
This is a point I've repeated before, and it's a point I repeated again. Governor elections are weird. Sometimes you see really weird overperformances in cases where there maybe shouldn't be overperformances, even in states like Georgia, where there's a growing amount of polarization. But if there are, maybe we see a downturn in African, I would guess mostly in white suburban, areas, majority white, suburban areas of Atlanta, that people may cast their ballot for Raphael Warnock, but decide, Brian Kemp's done a good job as governor of the state. I'm going to vote to reelect him. I'm talking about in suburban areas around, I'm thinking Savannah as well. That was an underrated area for Joe Biden's victory in 2020 as well. These more white suburban areas, Kemp is someone who is also probably going to get as much vote out of the more rural exurban areas as he can. He has a pretty good lock hold on those areas.
Mm-hmm.
But when we're talking about moving this race to likely, I am talking about not in terms of margin, but I am talking about certainty of victory. I never want to say a race is ever 100% certain. But however, when we're talking about a likely race, that means I'm probably, I would give 80-20, 85-15 odds right now that Brian Kemp is going to be reelected as governor of Georgia. And not only do I feel that, but most of our team feels comfortable in saying that, which again, it feels like a weird thing to say, but it's part of what it is right now in determining the environment in Georgia.
Yeah. The margin's been unchanged since April, February, March. It's kind of remarkable how consistent polling is here.
Yeah, and I think there was a perception that Abrams would be a stronger candidate in a rematch than she's turned out to be. And I think a lot of her weaknesses as a candidate have shown throughout this campaign.
The rollout was awful. I think that the number one factor I would say here, aside from the fact that everyone's had near 100% name identification for years. If you're in Georgia and you're going to be voting in this election, there's almost a 0% chance you don't know who Stacey Abrams and Brian Kemp are. Stacey Abrams has been in the news 24/7 for the last 4 years. Brian Kemp has been in the news 24/7 for the last 4 years. But even more specifically, like she started out her campaign and had gaffe after gaffe after gaffe, and it was like pretty consistent. I mean, I can't recall the last time I've seen a major Stacey Abrams story in the news. Can you?
No, and there's a reason Warnock's so significantly outpacing her in every poll.
Yeah. Obviously, candidate quality matters there. He's an incumbent as well. So, like, I think it's a very possible scenario where Brian Kemp wins re-election easily by, say, 6 or 7 points. That's similar to what Republicans were doing in Georgia for years before this election. Georgia was considered a likely Republican state when Mitt Romney, John McCain, Donald Trump were winning it by 6 to 7 points, 5 to 7 points, and this included in statewide elections.
Yeah,
it's very possible that happens, and Warnock forces it to a runoff where he probably is more favored than in a general election. We don't know much about Walker's not had a great campaign start either. Polling is still pretty close there. We have that as a toss-up. I think most of us probably think it would go Democratic.
Yeah,
not Democratic in terms of winning, but like in terms of who would lead going into a runoff, it would probably be Warnock right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more bullish on Warnock than I think everyone on the team. I think he's the most well-positioned of the toss-up incumbents, but I mean, yeah, I think it's very close.
Yeah, and again, Democrats have not been expending a lot of energy in Georgia aside from Warnock. There's just a whole lot of factors here. It just seems like the momentum behind the Stacey Abrams movement has just kind of died out. I don't know if people kind of rested on their laurels after 2020, after those two, the presidential and those two Senate races, the voting bill. I don't know what it was.
Well, I mean, this is also what happens when you say your state's the worst state to live in.
Yeah,
that doesn't help. That never helps.
No, it's something that's objectively like. It's one thing if you're saying that like in Rhode Island or something, and you're like doing it as like an anti-establishment thing. I think generally people are in broad agreement that Georgia is a good enough place to live in, that it's growing rapidly for that reason. It's one thing to say a state like that is like, we can do better. We're failing in these areas. We can do better. It's one thing to say this state is bad. It's the worst state in the country. It's just such a ridiculous statement. It's not true. But I don't know how much of that had to do with anything. How much was it was the mask stuff? How much of it was Republicans just despising Stacey Abrams in a visceral manner?
And Brian Kemp seemingly through no effort of his own shaking the Trump label. He didn't even try to shake the Trump label.
I think that's a very good point.
Yeah, well, he shook he kept his credibility by passing conservative bills, and he also stood up to Trump on the election stuff. That gives him enough credibility with a lot of suburban moderates.
Yeah, I mean, suburban moderates are going to go, okay.
The economy is great. Crime is relatively low. Atlanta is doing its own thing.
Is the economy great in Georgia?
It's better.
I don't know if the economy's good anywhere right now.
Yeah, but it's like no one is blaming it. Like as far as states go, Georgia's doing better than most states, right? People are not looking at this and blaming Brian Kemp for a bad economy. They're not looking at and if people get a lot of credit. And again, gubernatorial races, the incumbents tend to do pretty well. Laura Kelly in Kansas is, again, that race could be very competitive too. We have that at Leans. That's one we may need to reconsider at some point after value them both after those referendum. We see that there after some more polling. But like incumbent governors are pretty hard to defeat. It is pretty difficult to defeat an incumbent governor unless you're like literally Tom Corbett and you defunded education. Like it's
hooray for Pennsylvania Republicans, everyone.
or you're Chris Christie in a hypothetical.
Look at us go, everyone.
Or you're Chris Christie in a hypothetical run for a third term where you're at 4% approval rating.
Yeah. Or you're, literally any Illinois governor in history other than J.B. Pritzker. And even he is not like doing that hot in terms of, we have it safe, but it's like compared to like, if Republicans didn't have a garbage nominee there, that would be one to keep an eye on.
J.B. Pritzker is going to win by like 10 to 12 points and break the mold. He's going to be fine.
Well, again, we're talking about incumbent governors breaking the mold of popularity. How about Ned Lamont in Connecticut being the first governor to be like not despised in like 20 years?
good for Ned Lamont. He deserved better than getting beat by Joe Lieberman. He
No,
deserved better than getting beat by a Republican.
Joe Lieberman voted for Obamacare. He's no Republican.
Yeah, he did take the best provision of Obamacare out of the bill.
You mean the worst provision?
You mean the worst one, sir?
But speaking of garbage Democratic bills, sorry, let's just go on to the.
Do we actually just want to pivot to the polls and
We're
then
going-
go to
we're-
reconciliation?
I don't know which one do we want to do first.
I feel like as good of a segue as that was, I feel like polling is more natural.
No, we're going. Let's talk this reconciliation bill. Let's talk.
So
All right, let's talk the
Yes.
stupid stuff.
So, Inflation Reduction Act. Immediately after the CHIPS bill was passed, Joe Manchin and Chuck Schumer announced they have an agreement on a budget reconciliation bill. Mitch McConnell seemingly got played here. I didn't like CHIPS. I didn't think it should have passed, and I'm clearly validated by that viewpoint.
I don't love chips. It's corporate welfare, and I'm not big on
Yep.
that.
But so this new climate bill will spend a lot of money and apparently raise even more money than that. Like I believe the total is like 500 billion spent,
Right,
and then
yeah.
in theory, like 740 raised. Of course, the question is in theory. A lot of this is some of it can be tricky math. Some of it is, we're going to give the IRS money and they're going to get even more money. That's not solid tax revenue. That's like projections that can change. There's a lot of loans in this that, if the loans don't get paid back, that, loans to businesses, if those don't get paid back, they go Solyndra, that's not going to be revenue. But generally speaking, the general assumption among economists is this is probably going to marginally reduce the deficit somewhat, although maybe and not immediately.
300. The bill said it was, or the projection was that it would reduce the deficit by about 300 billion.
Yeah. But
but
economists are saying it's much more marginal. That's all long term and pretty much immediately.
I
It's not
thought
going
that
to have
was
any
for
real impact.
inflation. I thought that was for inflation, not
That was two of them. The Wharton thing was that it would have no impact on inflation, maybe even an inflationary impact, which is ironic given the title of the bill, and that it would have a limited impact on the budget deficit immediately and long term would be better. Although, again, projecting 7 years down the line, the deficit will have been reduced. That all depends on projections. I'm more concerned about the immediate numbers, which are it's not going to have a huge impact. Help out. I'm also concerned by the tax hikes. Apparently, this will have tax hikes on basically everyone making over 300 or 30,000 a year. The brunt of the tax hikes will be on those making over 100,000. But if you're in a tax bracket above 30,000, you're going to be hit by this thing. That was according to the congressional review, or there was a review of the bill. Would see marginal changes in those rates. That can be politically problematic for some Democrats. It's problematic for Biden, who promised that there would be no tax increases for anyone making under 400,000 of any kind. This is why you don't make that promise.
Eric. You are forgetting. You still have a Republican in Arizona who can who will kill the whole thing.
Yeah, so that's the problem here, right? Is Manchin and Schumer did this together. Manchin is clearly excited about this to some degree. Schumer is very excited about this. Democrats are. The one Democrat who has not seemed very excited about this is Kyrsten Sinema, who was not included in these negotiations. It's generally been known the entire time that the strategy here is to get Manchin on board and then tell Sinema, you vote for this. You're going to be voting for this, and expecting her to do it.
That seems like a bad strategy.
Yes. On the one hand, she is more liberal than Joe Manchin. On the other hand, she is Kyrsten Sinema, and not being included in the conversation is not great.
So Joe Manchin operates in a way I don't quite understand, but in a way that is internally consistent. Kyrsten Sinema operates purely, from what I can tell, on what keeps her in the spotlight.
Chaos. She operates in chaos.
Like, hail Lord Chaos, everyone! Woo!
Like, in theory, she should have supported a lot of the things that Democrats have put forward that she hasn't. In theory, she should be more liberal than Manchin. In function, it seems like she's been more of a roadblock than Manchin.
She's more of an institutionalist than Manchin. That's kind of the problem. Manchin's whole deal is I think Manchin is very much on board with the traditional Democratic style of negotiation under the Obama administration, which was Democrats propose something. They include a few things that Republicans might possibly like, and then say, this is the compromise, now vote for it. This is what Manchin came out and said after he put out this bill. He's like, Republicans should vote for this bill because it has permitting reform. Like, that's not good faith negotiation. That is, this is something in here that you can like. You should vote for it for that reason, but we're not going to let you change anything. That's not negotiation. Sinema really likes negotiating on a bipartisan basis with other lawmakers, and including Republicans. She loves the gangs, like the gangs, the Gang of 10, Gang of 20, working on the infrastructure bill, for example. That's the sort of stuff she loves. She loves working on these sorts of things individually. And her MO, if you've read her book, is that she thinks that you can push policy to the left by pursuing personal relationships with other senators on a bipartisan basis and working on things bipartisan and on a one-on-one basis with other senators. I think it's internally consistent generally that she does not want to irritate her relationship with other colleagues. She would prefer to pass bills with incremental changes rather than big changes, and she likes direct negotiations.
See,
that's, I think, her difference. She's not as leadership friendly.
And I can appreciate that strategy to an extent. I mean, I like the idea of using personal relationships as a way to push policy, but the idea that voting for something that you mostly agree with, not voting for it because it would irritate your personal relationships, feels like putting the institution above the values you have.
Yeah, it would certainly be more of a personal slight here too, because she was not included in negotiations. This includes things she does not like. This includes, for example, corporate tax shifts that she is not a fan of. If they had negotiated with her, this could possibly have been removed immediately. Instead, she's basically said, we're going to wait for the scoring, and I may want some changes. If you're a Democrat, I may want some changes are probably the 4 scariest words you could hear from Kyrsten Sinema after you've worked on this behind the scenes with Manchin. This is already, for a lot of Democrats, barely acceptable. It has permitting reform. Yeah, it has permitting reform. This is not something that would get 60 votes in the Senate on its own, and that's not because Republicans wouldn't vote for it. Every Republican in the Senate would probably vote for permitting reform. The problem is you would not get 10 Democrats to vote for this in the Senate. Schumer said he'd include it in the budget bill, and that it'll be voted, and that it'll have the support. It will get through, but it's not part of this actual reconciliation package because it cannot be. It needs the 60 votes. So you add that in there. The SALT people are very angry that, of course, this is not giving them their cash cow back. Not giving them
hope and seethe.
Yeah, the environmentalists want radical progressive change on the climate, not pretty substantial progressive change on the climate.
Actually, look, to be fair to the climate crowd, which I am a part of, the Sunrise Movement immediately came out and said this is a good bill and we should pass it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, yes, we want more, but yeah, they would pass this. They would support it.
But the thing is, if you cut out some of the stuff that if you say like, oh, we're going to cut out the corporate tax changes, all of a sudden that changes the revenue stream. And that changes Manchin, who is not a fan of tax hikes and recessions, but is apparently not a fan of the Trump tax cuts either, and wants to reverse some of the changes it made to corporations and higher income brackets. If you get rid of those changes, that money has to come from somewhere, or you're going to have Manchin saying, well, this isn't deficit reduction anymore.
Right. See, this is the problem with the Manchin Sinema block. Manchin wants to pay for things through tax hikes. Sinema doesn't want tax hikes.
Mm-hmm.
You got to get both.
You
can't get both. They have competing interests, and they don't seem to talk to each other.
Yeah. This is why if you had 51 Democratic senators, it would be much easier because you only have to deal with one of the two on an issue-by-issue basis.
Damn you, Cal Cunningham.
Hooray for Cal.
Damn you, Sarah Gideon.
You should be more mad at Sarah
I don't
Gideon.
know what happened there. That was funny.
I'm mad at both of them. They're both dumb.
Look, this is not nearly as embarrassing as Republicans holding, a 54 to 42 majority or 54 to 46 majority and still not repealing Obamacare. That's not as embarrassing as that.
No, that was objectively funny.
Not if you're me.
If you're me, that was hilarious.
But yeah, so we don't know how this bill will go. We don't know what it will continue. We don't know how Democrats will respond to it. For example, Republicans would have a field day if this bill raises a single cent on the middle class during a recession. Republicans will run ad after ad after ad lambasting Democrats at that point. It's not even a question. They'll
See,
probably do it even if it doesn't pass at this point. I mean,
yeah, they will. No, they absolutely will. See, here's the thing. Okay, cinema doesn't kill it. Guess who will? Josh Gottheimer. The salt crew has a lot of salt. They will kill it.
That's an interesting thing in the House too, is the Salt crew. And it's about a team of what, like 5 or 6?
Yeah, it's like I don't remember.
Gottheimer, Cheryl, Swozy.
Well, Swozy already came out and said it's fine.
Ah, okay.
So my guess is it's going to be Kurt Schrader on his "fuck you" tour for the Democratic Party.
That's the glorious "fuck you" tour.
Gottheimer and Cheryl, Jared Golden, because Jared Golden has to vote no on everything, whether it's Democrat or Republican. Jared Golden.
Henry Cuellar because he wants to win.
Henry Cuellar because he wants to win, and because he's also on a bit of a "fuck you" liberals tour.
Vicente Gonzalez, perhaps, because he would like to win as well, but
might be sweating that a little bit.
Yeah, he might be sweating that.
But I think those are your no votes in the House. I don't see this passing. I don't see this passing under any circumstances. I'm happy Manchin's on board. You don't got cinema though. And
see, I'm the exact opposite because I think this thing will pass. I think the cinema's threat of a primary in 2022 probably is a bigger concern for her. They could probably pressure her on that point. And I think the House Democrats are mostly on board with this. I'm a pessimist, and I'm pretty sure it will pass.
Cinema will just run a Betsy Johnson style campaign and let Kelly Ward be the next senator from Arizona.
Oh God, no, she would win that against Kelly Ward. It would be
not Ruben Gallego versus Kelly Ward versus
oh God,
Kirsten Sinema.
That sounds terrible. Can we not do that? You see, I'm gonna save you. This is gonna be our rollover. This is gonna be our switching topics here, because the state of Arizona. Boy, oh boy. The state of Arizona. I want to take a moment to talk about the state of Arizona. So first of all, the state of Arizona has a lot of dumbasses in the Republican Party.
Oh yeah,
let's get that very straight, because it seems like going into Tuesday that the nominee is going to be Kari Lake, who seems dead set on running a 2020 truther campaign, and Blake Masters, who seems to be a very, very smart person, just not politically. If you would think that saying out loud that you want to privatize Social Security in a state where there are many, many, many people on Social Security, would consider that a bad idea.
You would think praising the Unabomber in an election campaign, if you're not a Democrat, would be a bad idea.
I still think we're glossing. I don't know any Democrats who have praised the Unabomber, but regardless, I think we're all glossing over the worst thing Blake Masters said, which is that the problem with gun crime was black people.
Oh, that's right. Forgot about that. That was stupid too.
Yeah, I don't think he's a smart guy.
Also overturning
I think he is a very, very stupid man.
Anyway, but Arizona in general is just a mediocre state. I mean, you look at it's too hot there. There's no 4 seasons. It's in the middle of a desert. Look at their sports teams. I mean, it is just the pinnacle of. Eric knows this. It's just the pinnacle of mediocrity or sucking. Other than the Phoenix Suns,
Joe, we can't talk about mediocrity. We come from Pennsylvania and New Jersey.
No. We have championships here in my state. I mean, you're in New Jersey, so yeah, you're mediocre. Anyway.
I'm sure you're looking forward, Joe, to the next entire 6 months of Fetterman's campaign just being New Jersey ads.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna be in school. I don't care. I'm gonna be in school. I'm not gonna see them.
I do think that is a vaguely effective message, but we'll get into that.
Anyway, look, just Arizona is a crappy state. You look at the Arizona Cardinals. That's a trash organization. You've got the Arizona Diamondbacks, the trash organization. The
Arizona Republican Party, trash organization.
Yeah, but I've already yelled about that. I've yelled about too many times about this on this website. But you've got the Phoenix Suns, who are somehow doing good right now, but they'll never really find a way to blow it. Still trash. Then you've got the Arizona Coyotes, I was watching an old thing from. I think you guys will laugh at this when I say it. I was watching an old clip of a podcast I like, a hockey podcast. It reminded me that the Arizona Coyotes hockey team, this is a professional National Hockey League franchise, is going to be playing out of a 3,500 seat arena for the next 3 to 4 years on Arizona State University's campus because they were kicked out of their home in Glendale before they could try and build a new arena in Tempe. So for the next 3 to 4 years, potentially longer, because construction and the fact that the Coyotes have terrible ownership, they are going to be stuck playing in front of a capacity crowd of 3,500 people as a professional team. This is not some junior league team. This is not a minor league team. This is a professional hockey team who is going to go play in a college building because they were kicked out of the professional rink they were in because they wouldn't pay their rent on time. If that doesn't perfectly describe the state of Arizona, then by the state of that franchise, I don't know what else will. It's a stupid state. Stupid.
It is a stupid state. I think it's very funny that Jim Lamont drops out of the gubernatorial. Jim Lamont.
Not Jim Lamont.
Who dropped out of the gubernatorial race?
Matt Salmon.
Matt Salmon. Sorry, their last names sound similar. I think it's very funny that after Matt Salmon dropped out and endorsed Karen Taylor Robson, it looks like Kerry Lake actually went up in the polls. I think
so. Yeah, unless there's a polling error, there has been a weird issue in some of the polls where live caller voting has been tied in the last few polls, while the different panels of the text panels, online panels, have been more favorable to Lake. That's basically the only hope if you're not wanting a lunatic to win the nomination. It's worth noting, of course, that Kerry Lake is a former Obama donor. Has no firm connections to the Republican Party anyway, but she was endorsed by Trump, so she must be the true conservative.
That's all she needs.
Yep.
Don't you know, Eric? This is still
and the best part, this race is going to be a toss-up even if Kerry Lake wins, because the Democratic field is awful too, with Katie Hobbs being the nominee, who is facing very, very credible allegations of workplace abuse.
So we have an Amy Klobuchar there too.
It's even more.
Yeah, it's just making people eat with combs and just racial slurs and the like.
Oh, so it's that kind of bad.
Yes.
Okay. I see. All I heard was workplace misconduct, and I thought, oh, so she's throwing staplers and making people eat with combs.
No, worse.
Oh, slurs. Yeah, that's bad. That's not good. Arizona, fix your shit, please. But on the bright side, Mark Kelly's going to have a much easier time when Blake Masters wins the nomination.
That's not a reminder.
Because there's no real. I know Eric is still holding out hope, but is there really any dispute at this point that Blake Masters is very heavily favored?
He's favored unless there's some polling error and Jim Lamont wins it. I mean, it's not going to be Brnovich. I can tell you that.
No, Brnovich is not doing great.
He's run an awful campaign.
But I mean, I don't think I've seen a poll lately where Masters is up by less than 10. This is not Ohio anymore. Blake Masters seems to be pulling away, unlike JD Vance, who never really pulled away against Mandel. Mm-hmm. He pulled away a little.
Yeah, because Vance was running a legitimately awful campaign that had no momentum until Trump endorsed him.
Still is.
Yeah, he still is running.
Yeah, that's cool.
I mean, is it even fair to call what he's running a campaign?
I swear, if this guy had been nominated in a neutral year or a Democratic year, Tim Ryan might actually have a prayer.
Yeah, he's again, I do not want to call what JD Vance is running a campaign, because he's not fundraising. He's not answering the calls from donors who want to give him money. He's off in Israel at CPAC talking about fertility rates. And then even further, it's just you have the divorce comments. It's like,
we're gonna let these people near power.
There's a reason I call these people populists and not populist. That's in their head. It's doo-doo in their head.
We're gonna let bad people near power.
It's like who they focus in on the dumbest possible issues. So with JD Vance, this whole fertility thing in these families, like we have to have families to the extent that it's bad to divorce if there's a violent marriage. And like for context here, the marriage that I think the line that he would cross here is that his own grandmother doused his grandfather with gasoline and set him on fire, and they stayed together. Like, I mean, he's
I didn't
not
know
good.
that.
He grew up in an abusive household. This is just he should know.
Man needs
Miserable. Yeah, it's just
man needs therapy.
This is not something you want to defend. This is not something you want to defend in public. You have the whole Orban thing. You have him as being a complete and utter dumbass in general. Then you have Blake Masters, who is just seemingly wanting to have a bingo card of the idiotic things people should never say. Privatize Social Security in Arizona. Black people cause gun violence. The Unabomber was great. He's a great thinker. What a great guy the Unabomber is. I mean, overturned Griswold versus Connecticut. Like,
I can't
oh
wait
my
to
God.
I can't wait to hear what Blake Masters says during the debates.
I still can't get over the fact his early ads were all in cornfields. Like,
But Eric, rural.
the Bitcoin ad. Yeah, him trying to promote crypto and legitimately releasing NFTs.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Up until you said NFTs, I was thinking, okay, that's the least bad of the things you said.
No, he released NFTs.
NFTs, that's bad.
So JD Vance had to give us $10,000 and I'll have dinner with you with Peter Thiel. No, Blake Masters is I'm going to release NFTs of my book and they're going to go to my campaign.
You think this is bad? You think this is bad? Just wait until podcaster Dave Rubin primaries Marco Rubio.
Good God! I also forgot. I also forgot that that Blake Masters went to the premiere of 2,000 Mules
with Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah, with Marjorie Taylor Greene. He also endorsed a bill in Arizona that would ban all early voting, all mail-in voting, all absentee voting.
I guess
one election day for the entire state.
I guess fuck me then.
Like, oh my God,
Eric, is that your mic? I'm hearing that too.
Yeah, that's you again, Eric.
Which one?
Your mic, it's making noise.
How about now?
Nope, you're good now.
Whatever.
But hey, on the bright side, you guys totally aren't choking in Pennsylvania.
Well, you know what? At least I could say that, like, Oz is out there. He is doing things. His face is in public.
It is, but it's also in Ireland and New Jersey.
He is legitimately campaigning. Fetterman may not be able to campaign the rest of the Senate election, which is concerning. I am less concerned about Oz than I am about Masters because...
Oh, yeah, no, Masters is worse.
Yeah, Masters is just... Again, it's not necessarily a race we'd move immediately because we don't have a whole ton of private polling on this yet, but, like, he's not a good nominee. This is like this... Like, I would say he's genuinely like a Ken Buck sort of nominee. Carrie Lake has a better chance just because the field is worse, and also, again, running for governor, Katie Hobbs is like actually terrible.
Yeah, but say what you will about Mark Kelly, the man is a money printer.
Yeah,
and you're gonna have a hard time beating that, even with a good candidate.
Well, the good thing is that Blake Masters is definitely getting a ton of donations from Peter Thiel to fund his entire campaign. Oh wait, he's not. Peter Thiel's not really spending anything at this point, so it's
woo. Man, I'm still just mourning that this Senate field that y'all have put together is not happening in a slightly better year for Democrats. Democrats could legit win like 54 seats if this were a good year for them.
This is a pretty terrible. Yeah, like the numbers for Oz are not great. Also, I don't think anyone believes that Mastriano is down by 10 and that Oz is down by 11.
No.
There's some very strange polling going on. In particular, the Mastriano, because pretty much every single private poll is in agreement that it's like within a 5-point race at this point, right? That to some degree, it's relatively competitive. It's more competitive than Shapiro would like.
Now, I would buy, and Joe might disagree, I would buy Fetterman up by like 6 at the moment.
Totally possible.
I could buy it in the terms of it's like a 45-39 poll.
Yeah, or like
I could buy
41.
I could buy that. I think some people have put it the right way. I think The reason why I think it's fair to say that Oz is in theoretically less trouble is because he does still have base issues with ours. He's been polling around like 65, 70, 75% of Republicans right now, like supporting him, and then like a bunch rest are undecided. If and hopefully when, for me at least, hopefully when, that's a personal Joe opinion there, but if he can boost those Republican numbers back up to like the usual 90, 95% that we see for most candidates, this is when that becomes a close race. And that's when we'll really see it happen.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. I mean, Oz's problem right now is with the base, and if the base comes home to him, he I don't know that he'll win, but he is back in the game.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, in theory, Oz Mastriano is not an awful ticket because those base voters will be voting. They'll be out there voting for Mastriano.
But
yeah.
But my counterpoint is that it's been like, what, 2-3 months since the primary?
Kind of, but keep in mind, we haven't had a lot of actual specific polling from Republicans on this since then. And also, that primary was undecided for like a month after it happened.
It's undecided for a week.
Was it a week? I thought it was longer than a week.
I don't think it was that long.
It was a couple weeks at least where we're still trying to figure out exactly who had won that. Do you remember exactly how long it was, Joe?
It was we had a couple of weeks. We didn't have an official decision until the beginning of June, around early June.
But still, I mean, beginning of June, we're about to be in August. And I mean, I am also of the belief that the Republican base will come home to Oz, but I am starting to wonder when.
We'll see. I do think it's less concerning than Arizona, certainly for Republicans, though, because just
agreed.
I mean, there's no putting around it that. I mean, it's just specifically awful. Masters is just not great.
And then there's whatever Herschel Walker is doing. He's not running a terrible campaign. He's certainly not running a great one, from what I can tell, though. And at this point, I've always been a little more bullish on Warnock, but I'm feeling slightly vindicated on that. Walker doesn't seem to be doing spectacularly.
I mean, you mean Walker?
I thought that's what I said. Sorry.
Walker. I thought you said Warnock.
Yeah, Walker's not doing spectacularly.
Yeah, the field is not looking terrific for Republicans. Oddly enough, one of the states that's more promising for Republicans is in New Hampshire. The nominees are not great there, but none of them are awful. Particularly Morse, I think, is the one that Republicans would prefer there over Baldock, just because. But
yeah, I think there's I forget this Chuck Smith, I think, whatever his name is, but I think there's just Smith in there. I don't know. But I think in New Hampshire, as long as it's not Don Baldock, I know that Chuck Morse is not a hitherto exciting candidate. But I don't think a state like New Hampshire is going to punish boring in the potential year we have set up. I don't think that's going to be punished if it's Morse as the candidate. I think New Hampshire has a history in just all type of midterm years of just being close in general. For incumbent parties, even popular ones, I think you remember that Chris Sununu was within 5 points by Molly Kelly in 2018. This is not a race necessarily. This is not a type of area necessarily where this if again, I don't think New Hampshire would punish boring. I don't think New Hampshire would punish boring. Morse is not a exciting nominee, that's for sure. But it's not to the point of it's terrible. It's just that he's kind of boring. And
he's not bad.
Yeah, I don't think New Hampshire has ever been a state that punishes boring.
Yeah, Nevada was looking really good for Republicans. Wisconsin, Democrats just appear to have completely flubbed their recruiting field. Mandela Barnes is not a good fit for that race. It's got a lot of specific baggage issues. I don't think Democrats are even looking at it as a huge top tier at this point.
No,
Even
I
though they
think
solidified the field for him, that's the one where it seemed like and you'd think they'd have someone better against Ron Johnson, but apparently they couldn't find anyone in
like
the entire state of Wisconsin.
I really like Mandela Barnes, but I do think Democrats have largely given up on him as having a shot. And I get it. This is not a year where you go on the attack. I do think Nevada's. I think Nevada's the most likely state to flip easily.
Yeah, Laxalt's a good fit for the state. He's running a good campaign. He's not falling into the abortion trap, and in fact, it's impossible to fall into the abortion trap in Nevada because Democrats made the mistake of codifying abortion into state law in Nevada. They can't use it as an electoral issue anymore.
Yeah, but at least it's safe.
Because even if it federally goes away, right? Like as an issue perspective, it's a good thing. From a political politicking perspective, that's actually an issue that could affect voters in Nevada, and it can't because even if abortion becomes, even if there's a federal, or even if when Roe v. Wade did fall, abortion is still legal in Nevada. We need a federal law regulating abortion which is not going to happen, and also would be dubiously constitutional to some degree. To be able to affect it in Nevada. It's very unlikely, basically. They're basically taking it off the table as an issue.
I am totally good with that.
Yep. And
we did a good
most
thing.
people would be. Yep. But from a political perspective, if you were Catherine Cortez Masto, you would have loved to be able to campaign on that issue.
You would have, yes.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, the polling's been weird. Very weird.
District and state polling are showing two very, very different sorts of elections right now.
Yeah, district polling lines up with where we think the environment's going to end up. State polling is like not in the same world as that.
And the weird thing is that we kind of saw the same thing in 2020, but we thought it was swapped, in which we thought the statewide polling was showing a more accurate truth than what the district-wide polling was showing. Because if you remember, the non-internal district pollings were showing much closer items than what we were seeing from the statewide polling.
But see,
2020.
the really funny thing is the national polling is showing completely different things from the district and statewide polling.
It's been weird.
Yeah, basically,
we have an issue. We've known this for a while. We have an issue with polling in this country. It's just a general fact. There's at least a decent wide issue with polling in this country, and I don't think anyone's gonna fix it anytime soon. And that has to be taken into effect with the fundamentals.
Yeah, I think you got to rely on the fundamentals above polling, the map, the fundraising, candidate quality. A lot of that is just kind of up in the air and subjective, but it seems like that's more reliable than polling at the moment. Who knows? Maybe we get to election night and Fetterman wins by 11. Who knows?
That would be really surprising.
That would be stunning.
Yeah.
Fetterman would be coronated the 2024 presidential nominee if he won.
If he could, actually attend the coronation. Which, we're dealing with a candidate who could have some genuine
isn't he back out on the trail? I thought he was cleared to go back out recently.
Not really.
I know he made a couple campaign stops.
Yeah, he's been in a weird situation. He's not nearly close to being able to campaign really fully yet. It's been limited sort of stuff. But again, we'll see. But I think unless you have anything else to go over, that may have run. I think we may have run the course of this episode.
I think we might have.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, but so thank you guys for watching. Again, really appreciate your support every week, tuning in to listen to us and to watch the show. Regardless of where you're watching, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, any podcast platform. We be sure to like and subscribe if you like what we're doing. We do this every week. We have election coverage coming up on Tuesday. A lot of states coming up there. Kansas, Michigan, among others. Washington, I think, as well. Really, really big, important primary states for congressional, gubernatorial elections, all sorts of stuff. So be sure to tune in. We'll be streaming that night. But yeah, thank you guys for watching again. Follow us on the platforms, do whatever. We'll see you here next week. We'll be back on Friday, our usual time, in all likelihood. Oh, go right ahead, Joe.
Don't forget Tuesday night live election coverage streams are back.
Mm-hmm.
For Tuesday's primaries, we'll be starting at 8 o'clock Eastern time on Tuesday night when polls close in the state of Michigan. It's going to be a long night. It's going to be a fun night. But it's back. It is back with a full night, multiple states. We're very excited. Be here Tuesday night for those races.
Yep. But with that, we'll close off. Thank you guys. Come watch us Tuesday night, 8 o'clock, not 2 o'clock. But yeah, thank you. Yep. See y'all next week, Friday as well. That's when our next Elections Weekly podcast will be.